So how to keep discus like this in a beautiful layout? Of course, I'm sure all of you are experienced in keeping discus in a bare bottom tank, right? Very easy. You do your water changes, you feed it VHM or GHM or whatever you want, and it makes life so much easier, correct? But when it comes to a nature aquarium or a plant aquarium, it's a whole different ball game, right? Like Mr. Andrews said, there are so many parameters to take into account because you're trying to maintain a beautiful plant aquarium and also put the king of aquarium fish into this environment. So it's the best of two different worlds coming together. And discus will look amazing in a nature aquarium, but it's equally challenging. So I'll put you through some pictures, some ideas, some points which will help you, and we'll understand with some of our experiments that we have done what it takes to get there. And then hopefully next year when we organize this contest, we'll have not discus in bare bottom tanks, but discus in beautifully aquascape tanks. That will be my dream, which I'm looking forward to. So there is a lot of similarities between discus and nature aquarium, right? Of course, both are derived from nature, right? So one is the nature aquarium has a lot of these things which come from nature. So it's plants, substrate, tons of bacteria, good bacteria, right? So he spoke a lot about having, killing the bad bacteria. Here we're talking about having a lot of good bacteria. And then, of course, it's based on the Amazon river model, wherein even the discus comes from the Amazon, right? So most of the aquatic plants don't grow in the middle of the river, right? In the Amazon, they grow on the banks, they grow on the periphery, right? On the edge of the river. Same with discus, they don't live in the middle of the river. They're always living in the edge of the river, right? In the border of the river. That's why they have a beautiful environment to grow. And that's where the water level goes up and down. And that's where they breed and, have their life. Of course, the nature aquarium is a sustainable ecosystem and it's got an excellent water filtration system, because you've seen in a bare bottom tank to a nature aquarium how the water quality looks, right? So you see what is clear, what is sparkling, what is better. So these are all basic aspects of a nature aquarium, and I would say a nature aquarium is something like this, right? When it's done right, it's something like this, and it's a combination of a lot of things put together. It's not just one aspect, but many aspects put together, and that's what brings you to a beautiful nature aquarium. And it's a sustainable ecosystem, right? Where we're not looking at what to change every single day, right? And of course, it has to move on. The plants have to grow and sustain the whole ecosystem. Now, if you're looking at what discus love and what they do, so they, as you all know, they're very picky eaters, right? Half the problem is in making them eat. Am I right? Right? They're very picky eaters, and they want the best food on earth, like promo or whatever it is, to eat and do well, right? It's always exploring for food everywhere, right? But it doesn't eat. It just goes, picks it, and throws it away, right? This is what discus do normally. Of course, we all know that it requires excellent water quality, and it's from the Amazon, like we all know. And in the Amazon, there is a crazy amount of bacteria, right? Of course, it's a natural ecosystem. So, and it's of course rich in organic content. Now, of course, when we look at what you get in your tap, is water. It's very clean water, but it's not something fish-like, right? The water is made in a way, or the water is processed in a way that is good for human consumption, but it nowhere says that it's good for the fish, right? The reason being is that the water which is chemically treated is not the same that comes or that the fish actually live in, right? So I would say, for example, I'm sure all of you have visited or have touched or experienced fresh river water, right? And when you use fresh river water and put it on your face, you feel so, refreshing. But if you do it in the taps, the water has no soul. The water has been completely destroyed. Of course, the molecules is still H2O, but the way it's arranged is completely changed, right? And these fish, poor fish, have no option. Of course, one thing is taking out chlorine. The other thing is adding organic content to the water, which is very important for fish to live. Of course, there's a whole different thought process to it on keeping fish in a sterile environment to keeping fish in a holistic environment. It's just like us human beings. We can't live in a 100% pure oxygen environment, right? We're not living in that. We're living in the midst of all pollutants, but we take in a lot of air, but the body processes oxygen, and we go on by giving out carbon dioxide. The same thing for fish also. It needs a lot more than just sterile water. So if you want to create an ecosystem, then you need to focus on adding values in your water, right? In making it more holistic, wherein the water has got a lot of things, when I say organic, there's a lot of things to put in there, like the river, right? It passes through rocks, there's so much of, there's current, there's vortex, there's a soul in the water, but we lose the soul in the tap water, right? It's just lost because it's chlorinated, deionized, UV treated, there are hundreds of things that happen. So all these natural elements in the water is destroyed. And that's why we have 100 other problems which, like Mr. Andrew explained, which we have to solve, right? And of course, the Amazon River is home to many aquatic plants which discus eat, lay eggs on, so on and so forth, right? So you could understand the similarities between both the fish and the plants, or the environments. Both the environments are very similar, and what we're trying to achieve is very similar, yet there are complexities. So as I said, it's about mastering the best of two different worlds, right? It's about learning to fly a plane and also learning to maneuver a submarine, right? It's two totally different things, but you could bring it together, and it requires a lot of hard work, but nothing is impossible, right? So let's see how we can, get this going. So this is what, the Amazon will look like underwater, right? So this is pristine nature, untouched by man, with excellent water parameters. Water is flowing continuously, and lots of stuff for it to eat, right? Lots of stuff for it to eat, lots of plants purifying the water, and it's heaven for them. And we are bringing it because we like the way the discus looks, and it's so beautiful. But we never give them an environment like this. So they miss home perhaps, and may sometimes get homesick. That's where the problem starts. So I go through a couple of common challenges, right, which we encounter as hobbyists to keep the discus the way we want to keep it. So the basic thing is CO2. Yes, in a nature aquarium, we need to pump in a lot of CO2, but CO2 is not a problem, because as long as we have a little bit of dissolved oxygen, like Mr. Andrew said, I think about 3.5 ppm of dissolved oxygen is good enough. Fantastic. So till such time, we can pump in good amount of CO2. And pH is not a problem. Discus can go, I think, low, very low. pH of around 5 is also still fine. Okay? So your water 6.8 is fantastic. No problem. And water hardness, yes. Now plants and discus both like soft water. Just like Mumbai's water is perfect for it, right? So if you're in Mumbai and you have your water, your river water is excellent, your municipal water and soft water is amazing for discus. So if you look at it in the wild, the TDS in the Amazon where the discus comes from is something like around 40, right? So it's like excellent soft water. And most of the river sources, even in India, has the same TDS. But as it flows down, a lot of stuff is pushed into the river. Wantedly, unwantedly, nobody knows. But it's pushed in and the TDS increases. By the time it reaches your home, it's sitting at 120 or 200 or much more. So if you're looking at bore wells, the TDS in some places could go up to even 1,000. Right? So that's of course not good, but the lower the water hardness you get, the better the discus is. The other is light. Like Mr. Andrew said, you can put the light on for 24 hours. Right? Discus is still okay with that. We're all of the notion that discus does not like light, but they come from the Amazon, right? And in the river, there's actually no trees overhanging, right? It's completely barren. It's quite strong sunlight again. It's an equatorial region, right? So they have good 12 hours of lighting. And of course, you can't put 24 hours of lighting in a plant aquarium or nature aquarium because you're going to have algae. So there is a balance. So I would say about 10 to 12 hours of lighting is perfect. Yeah. And yeah. The next is feeding. In your bottom tanks, you can do siphon off the excess food if you feed it. But in a nature aquarium, you can't because the food is going to get stuck in between the plants. And that's a challenge. So you have to find the right kind of food. I don't have a brand name to tell you, use this food, it will be done. Because you have to kind of balance your feed, like Mr. Andrew was saying. You can't start with small discus in a nature aquarium. You need to develop your beautiful nature aquarium and then side by side grow your discus and then bring it together. Right? When your aquarium is totally set, you put the large discus in here. So at least at 5 inches is good because then we're not focusing on boosting their growth. Like what Mr. Andrew said, feeding 5 to 6 times a day is to have excellent growth, excellent shape. So you have to do this separately. So it's like a 1-year project, both. So side by side, 2 aquariums, put things together, bring the planted aquarium beautifully, so you have a clear understanding on what is done, what is not done, and then you bring your beautiful discus into their new home, right? Wherein it kind of brings the whole ecosystem together. So of course, I would say dry food is the best. Like a lot of people have spoken to you, of course, marine source food is better, like maybe brine shrimp flakes, maybe a choice, because the pathogens are not there. Marine pathogen will not affect freshwater fish, or so on and so forth. So it's something, one of the options. Of course, there are a ton of options of feed. So you have to give them a variety for discus to be happy and healthy. Of course, bloodworms, if you can get sterilized bloodworms, nothing like it. They love it, right? Of course, abroad it's easier. You get everything frozen, but India has still got limitations. Of course, it's there in the wild, but it's not sterilized. So we have to work on that. But feeding is important. At least two to 3 times a day is very important, and that will keep them happy. They eat everything, but they just need to be in the right frame of mind or right health, right condition to be able to eat. The next thing is water change. How often you change water and how much water to change. I would say you can once you have a set nature aquarium, twice a week 30% water change will do, right? Twice a week, and that should be good enough to keep your discus stable. But what will need to be important, I will come and tell you in the latter slides. Fertilizer, yes, you need to be important not to overdose fertilizer. Like Mr. Andrew was telling you, if you even add a dechlorinator, too much quantity, it affects the whole ecosystem. So what you're using becomes very critical here. You need to use something which is safe. So you have your 1 year of experiment time from the time you set up your niche aquarium to when you leave your discus in. I wouldn't say actually take you 1 year, but maybe if you're good at niche aquariums, maybe in 3 months you can put your discus in there. But then you should be a pro at it. And you need a slightly larger tank because you're putting a 5-inch fish there. So it has to balance with the ecosystem. So you will see in the later slides, I'll show you some more aquarium pictures with discus. And I will try and tell you the size of the aquarium. Like they're not small because you want to keep discus, you can't keep 1 fish, 2 fish, doesn't look good. You need to keep 6 or 8 fish for the beauty to actually be derived from that ecosystem. And it's not that you just have to keep only discus, you can keep a lot of other varieties of fish along with it. That's when it's harmony there, right? There is a flow and there is a symbiotic relationship between so many things happening there. So, of course, you need to add fertilizer every day and you have to be careful with what fertilizer you add. Like for example, if you add a dechlorinator into an niche aquarium, which is also an ammonia neutralizer, right? What will happen? It's good for the fish, but bad for the plants. Why? Because the plants need the ammonia. Plants need the nitrate technically. But if you bind the chlorine and also bind the ammonia, the plants will not grow, right? So you have to be careful on what you dose. You need to dose potassium, you need to dose micronutrients, you need to dose a bunch of things, right? So of course it's a long list, you all know that. You can read up about that. But yeah, be careful in dosing what you dose and you see your plant growth, because by the time you get your plant growth, you will know what is done, what is not done. And of course, bacteria, this is very, very important. You need to have the right kind of bacteria in your filter, in your substrate. Because your discus are constantly nibbling a lot of things, right? Including the substrate. And the more good bacteria they eat, their gut is better. Right? You want to always keep the gut better. It's like how you eat dairy, right? Curds, yogurt. It's got a lot of bacteria. You consume it. It's from really long time, right? It helps your whole gut system, right? And in so many ways. So in different places they have different bacteria, right? Even yogurt, there are many types of bacteria, and they help us to digest our food better. It keeps a good gut health. So same with the discus. I can't just give food. Food is not giving bacteria, right? But these are like probiotics that we need to add into the system, which is giving immunity to the discus, which is bringing stronger health, right? And of course, temperature for plants and discus, usually I would say, discus is kept at 30 degrees centigrade. Of course, excellent for breeding and stuff like that. But you could, if once you've grown them to a certain size and you don't want them to breed in an niche aquarium, you can bring it down to 24 to 26 degrees centigrade. They're perfectly fine. It's in the breeding season, we want to up the temperature, right? So if you are keeping it between 24 to 26, in Mumbai, perhaps you need to chill for that, right? So one more challenge, right? But other places you could try with fans and stuff like that, but 24 to 26, 27 is fine. When you hit 30, the plants will start showing some effect on growth, right? So 30 is your maximum you can go to. 31 and your plants will start showing signs of withering away or getting black. Ferns will start getting black and stuff like that. So keep the limit at, I would say 28, 27, 28 is your outer limit, because in a day there is a lot of temperature variation, right? So that should be good for discus and for pretty much all the plants that you have in the hobby. Issues faced, of course, Mr. Andrews covered a lot of issues, but I'm just going to focus on what are some of the symptoms that we have seen over the last couple of years, when you keep discus in a nature aquarium, and these are some things that I'm just giving you as a prep up, that when you have these issues, you know what to do, right? Of course, what Mr. Andrews said, his treatment is way beyond what we're thinking and is excellent. But you can't do these treatments in the nature aquarium. You'll kill everything there. You have to take the fish out and do it. But when you take the fish out, the parasite or the protozoan or flagellate will still be there in the nature aquarium. Like, you can't do anything about it. As long as you have certain fish which can be a host, it will be there. Like he said, it was like first thing, you treat it in the aquarium. That is your hospital. We can't do this because it'll be destroying one world, right? So you have to be a little careful. So we usually have these three problems. Discus not eating after some time and hole in the head, right? So kind of is very similar to what Mr. Andrews spoke. You know, the of course has to be same. It can't be different, right? It's all the problems with discus, whether in a bare bottom tank or a nature aquarium. It's pretty much similar. So let's see some interesting examples. Of course, these aquariums are created by Mr. Takashi Amano. Some may not be on the internet, very old. So this is a 8 by 6 by 2.5 feet aquarium. It's really large, very old, in the early 90s. You'll see some beautiful pelvis, some anubias, very simple. This is another one with crinum. I don't know if you guys know about this plant, very beautiful plant, Crinum calamstratum from Thailand, but not in the trade anymore because it's almost extinct. You can see these white discus, very natural setting with some other fish. I can't tell what it is, some corridors, I think. I can't see it from here very well. Yeah, but it's a very beautiful environment, very similar to what you'll see in the Amazon, right? And they're happy. You can see by their shapes, their colors. This is a 6 by 6 by 3 feet height. So Mr. Amano always believed that the aquariums have to be quite large because their mass is big as compared to these tiny fishes, what we usually use in nature aquarium. So with only the larger aquarium, we're handling more water volume, so better filtration, right? Of course, with a lot of filters. From those times till to now, a lot of technology has changed. A lot of stuff has been brought and progressed. You know, lighting has changed. So much has changed. LED, all that has changed. So you still have a lot of scope to do a lot of things now. You can see the Raminos tetras. You can see some, I think some hatchet fish here. So you can see the ecosystem put together. Cypress elfrey, you have some ferns, crypticons, hair grass, a lot of stuff, a lot of moss. So it's a very beautiful environment for them, right? And having something like this is, I'm sure, everybody's dream. Just a close-up shots of some of them. Yeah, this is one more with even the Madagascar lace plant and a lot of hair grass, some Vindaloo ferns, Bolbitis. These are all brown discus. Yeah. Much larger colony, much larger aquarium. You'll see everywhere, the size of discus is much big. It's big, it's not small, right? It costs a lot of money when you go for larger discus. So these are some possibilities. Of course, today there's unlimited options of what we can do. So let's understand, you know, from all these things that you saw, you know, what is the way we can look at things. So I would say this is the disease triangle, where we have a disease, you have a pathogen, you have a conducive environment, and you have a host, right? It's only in this case when, when the disease comes in, when all these three are ticked. So if your fish is strong, it will never come. If it's like your environment is weak, maybe your water parameter is bad, place host, pathogen is around, or there is a host there, or it's the water quality, like I said. Now, these are possible infections that we've seen, in discus and in an aquarium. Of course, I would attribute it to protozoa or flagellates, which could be there in the discus from the time it was got, but not showing any signs in a bare bottom tank, right? So, in the quarantine process, bypasses the whole thing, but manifests itself later as things change. So, like Mr. Andrew was saying, changes in skin color is the first stage. Of course, it's internal, right? It's not external, right? So, only when it's internal you have changes in skin color. This is a typical, hole in the head issue. This is like the next stage where the fish is trying to fight it, but the protozoa, the flagellate, is trying to make holes in the head, eating into the system. We don't know why it happens, but it happens. There's still a lot of research to be done, right? And it will eventually kill the fish slowly, if you don't take appropriate treatment. So I don't know how many of you have experienced hole in the head issue, right? Usually happens when your pH goes above 7, right? And in a bare bottom tank, if you're going to change water every day, whatever the pH is, it will never happen, right? This will happen only in the condition that if you don't change water for very many days, and the fish eats its own poop, right? When the fish is going and picking on its own food, or its own poop rather, the protozoa, the flagellate, will live in this organic matter, and it will manifest itself over a period of time. And this is the biggest problem from what we've seen. So in a river system, this is always there in the discus, but in a river system, the water is flowing, right? It's continuous. So they're eating in the wild. From what we've noticed, discus are eating something called periphyton. It's basically dirt which they're eating. They're not eating like goat heart or beef heart or nothing of that sort. There's no meat in their whole diet. They're eating just some kind of when you clean your filter, what do you get? You get this brown color particles and stuff like that, right? That is what discus eats. So if you cut open a discus like Mr. Andrew was saying, and check its gut from the wild, this is what you'll see in the gut. It's basically called periphyton. It's supposed to be nutritious in certain ways, but it's not anywhere close to the meat diet that we give the discus. Right? It's nowhere close, because there's hardly anything in it. You can imagine when you clean a filter, all that muck that you get is all bacterial film and stuff like that, biofilm and things like that. That is what to eat. And this is the final stage where there's like fluid formation in the stomach, and then the discus cannot make it through, right? If you don't take any treatment at that time. So this is the major cause, according to what we have seen, in spironucleus. I think Mr. Andrews also has spoken about spironucleus. It will live in any aquarium as long as there is organic matter. So the most important thing I would say is, if you want to keep discus in each aquarium, you need to siphon basically the area where the plants and the substrate meets. If you're using decorative sand or you're using aqua soil or whatever, you need to do a lot of siphoning, making sure there's not organic matter on the surface. Organic matter in the root zone is fine, but not in that surface where the plants and the substrate meets. right? If you take this off, or you'll notice, or you can recall from the early examples also, there's lots of plants. You give it a lot of plant cover, and the discus will never go to the substrate. That is also fine. But you need to do a lot of heavy siphoning of the substrate through a small pipe. You just need to use a 10 mm pipe and pull out all the dirt. Then your fish should be fine. Of course, this is getting into a little detail where you have Spironucleus, Hexameta, and Octometus. These are the three groups of flagellates which usually attack the discus and start the problems. Usually, of course, I'm not gone into details as Mr. Andrew has gotten. This is the Hexameta chain, and this is the Spironucleus chain. Of course, everyone says use metronidazole, metro as shortly called, and every breeder, every importer is going to say the same thing. So I'll just tell you why we went there. Of course, this is the life cycle of Spironucleus. This is how the Spironucleus actually looks. This is from us also cutting open discus and taking the stuff out. So you can see the swarming of it, right? That's how a Spironucleus system works. So they're like small, tiny, flagellates which are continuously moving around in the gut in a swarm, like a shoal. That's the way they move. And for a long time, we used to think it's Hexameta which is causing all of the head, but not necessarily. So we've seen more condition of Spironucleus than Hexameta. So this is that spawning behavior. You can see them right there. They're all there. It's like a huge, like you see Daphnia basically. It's like that. This is Hexameta. The way Mr. Andrew showed you, the same thing. Yeah. So it basically goes from the mouth to the gut and travels back continuously. In the process, some hit the head, the rest start attacking the liver, the gut system. So you saw the fluid accumulation, it basically disintegrates the liver, and then the fish is no more. So there are ways to treat it. Of course, this whole metronidazole is one thing which we all used to believe in. Now, why metro is because a subspecies of that is called Giardia, which happens in human beings, and it's effectively controlled by metronidazole, right? So, because it's a case in humans, the aquarium community or fish researchers connected that we can use metro to actually kill Spironucleus and Hexameta, which is not the case. It's a different family. Yeah, it's only a short-term thing. It's not going to work in the long run. We cannot eliminate it with metro. Right? You can only control it to a certain extent. I don't think, of course, I've not tried Mr. Andrew's method, but like I said, it is a conducive environment, it is a host, and you have a pathogen, it will keep coming back. So I don't think there is a 100% sure shot cure or a way to kill these Spironucleus out or Hexameta. There is no medicine which we can say it will completely kill the protozoan and the egg. Impossible. Or they've not found it still. So it's still work in progress with a lot of researchers. But you can, by using this NLS feed, this is a new life spectrum discus feed, which contains 2-amino-5-nitrothiamazole. You can keep it under check. This is only the live ones, not the cyst. So by continuously feeding it, it will kind of keep a majority control. But if you don't control the organic load, it will come back again. That's the sad part. So I cannot say like the cause is exactly this, because it could be a nutrition deficiency, it could be minerals, it could be your water quality, it could be so many things. Because it's an ecosystem like we're building, right? So we can't pinpoint and say this is one problem this is happening. Like Mr. Andrew said, there are like 100 things and you use a standard way to get through it. So same thing here. We're not researchers to that level. And nobody's researching on this to that level. The human beings, yes, people will spend thousands of crores to get there. But this is too small with respect to all the other things. Like one fish, only discus, we spend so much money, it's not going to work. So that's what I was saying. So this is the Gyardia species here, like I told you earlier. Now this whole thing gets killed with metro. But this is again a different vertical. This is hexameter. So this was found quite recently, spironucleus, not earlier. Found in the sense in discus, not very long ago. But this was found long ago. But they thought it's similar and we kill it with the same thing. Doesn't happen, unfortunately. So prevention and care, I would say it's like quarantine, diagnose and treat all your incoming fish for a good amount of time. So here when you're growing things separately, you have a better chance to work things out. Good water quality, maintenance and husbandry practices. Use good quality feed, a variety of them, which will work well. Like I said, hole in the head is caused by spironucleus and stuff like that. So this is something called COD, chemical oxygen demand, which will measure the organic load in your aquarium. So if you can keep this around 4 will be good, the COD. And pH, I would say always below 7. The lower the better, for plants and the fish. And you can use something called Phyton Plus, which is from ADA. It will improve the immunity of the plants and the fish. It's just like 1 drop per 20 liters. Yeah, it's like 0.1 ml for 20 liters. Work very well. And like I said, siphon the base frequently. Keep all the bacteria nourished and healthy. So you need to feed the bacteria also. It's not like bacteria live on its own. It's like how you make curds. You need to take a culture and add it on next time to the milk and stuff like that. So you need to keep adding healthy bacteria. And if you can aerate the aquarium at night, daytime you're not aerating because we're adding CO2, but nighttime if you can aerate the aquarium, it's very good for the bacteria to stay alive. Otherwise, the bacteria may not survive the night. So this is through many nights, it will collapse. So it's not just 1 or 2 bacteria, for a fish tank, which is like, not having plants and substrate and all that, it's just that we need 7 or 8 types of bacteria. Break down ammonia to nitrate. But in a nature aquarium, we need almost 100 types of bacteria, right? Which kind of synthesize so many things. You need to keep the plants healthy, you need to keep the fish healthy, just like an ecosystem. So you need to work with many bacteria, and all these need food. So you need to add food. I think that's it, and I'll leave you with a beautiful picture of a nature aquarium, because this is one of the most difficult things to do, is having glossostigma on carpet and beautiful discus and nothing like it.
So I have one question. So most of the tanks you showed us had what we consider low-tech plants like Tenelis, but this is one of the few tanks that you showed us. The first time you showed us with Monte Carlo. I'm guessing glossostigma. Sorry, glossostigma. What is the difference between keeping a discus in a high-tech aquarium or versus a low-tech aquarium? Is it only supposed to be kept in a low-tech aquarium with low-tech plants?
See, I would say, you're looking at an aquarium where you have decorative sand to an aquarium where you're having a carpet, right? So with decorative sand, you have easy to siphon out stuff, right? But if you can actually have so many plants, the discus health will be much better, because you're creating an environment where they cannot actually go and pick on the substrate. And when they pick on the substrate, is where the problem starts, because they're pooping on the same substrate. Okay. Or you need to have excellent water flow, like a river, where the water is continuously being pushed away. So the poop is pushed away and moving somewhere into the plants, or the bacteria is eating them up. Then there's no problem. So either you create a very good filtration system, like I would say compared to a regular nature aquarium, you go 4 times. So that will, kind of create a system which is so powerful that your fish, your plants, everything will be happy. There's so much bacteria there, good bacteria. So that's what the discus calls for. It's a king. It wants a life like the king. You can't help it. You have to give it. Otherwise, it's not going to stay with you. Cool? Okay. Over to you, I guess.
So that was an amazing session we had with Adip sir. He's taught us a lot about how to keep discus fish in a nature aquarium. So I'm a planted aquarium hobbyist myself, and I know what you're teaching us here looks so easy. So because you're at that level, it is really difficult. But thanks for making it easy for us, making it easy to understand. And today, maybe perhaps most of the hobbyists here can go home and plan their 1 year out with discus in one aquarium and plant tank in the other aquarium. Thank you so much, Adip sir.